Welcome to the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, psychology student and international best-selling psychology author of over 30 psychology books, bringing you the latest psychology news, fascinating psychology topics and more each week. If you want to learn more, then please check out connorwhiteley.net/books. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube video or follow on your favourite podcast app. And here's the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 292 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is on what is Seasonal Affective Disorder, and it is Sunday the 20th of October 2024 as I record this. So today's episode is a really brilliant one because something I love about talking to different psychology students is that you always tend to hear about different mental health conditions and different mental health experiences. So I was talking to quite a new friend and we got on to the conversation of seasonal affective disorder, and what happened was that I realised, I should know more about this because it's interesting. Something we never really tend to look into it, and as I mentioned, and I made the boyfriend laugh though, as we enter into the sad season, then seasonal affective disorder becomes more prevalent because these are the winter months. There's a decrease in sunlight, which causes seasonal affective disorder. So if you want to understand what the condition is, what some of the diagnostic criteria, and what some of the treatments, then this is a brilliant episode for you. And I really did enjoy it, so I know you're going to enjoy it too. Moving on to the psychology news section, we're reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest. And the first one sounds quite weird, but interesting. 5 ways honest placebos can help. Placebos can be a powerful tool for treating anxiety, depression, and chronic pain, but the assumption that the patient must be deceived into believing that they are getting an active treatment rather than an inert drug means that some medical practitioners feel it is unethical to use them. These practitioners may be pleased to hear that there's growing evidence that honest, open-labelled, and non-deceptive placebos can work too. In these studies, patients are usually told that they are not being given an active drug, but that there's evidence it might help anyway. According to some recent findings, this honest approach can in certain cases be as effective as deception. Okay, so there's not a great amount that I'm actually going to talk about when it comes to this psychology news section, because this is very much biomedical research, biomedical model for mental health, and I don't really do that, and I'm really not interested in it. But placebos and control groups, or treatment as the usual groups, are still extremely valuable in clinical psychology research because they help us to understand that psychotherapy does have a active effect on treating mental health. Plus, it's also good to know that there are ways to make biomedical research more ethical in that sort of line and using deception towards patients with the typical or at least traditional placebo drugs, then we can actually find this more honest approach though. So I hope this continues to be researched. I hope this continues to be adopted in a wider society, because this actually could be quite good. So the second one is, fact checks work, whether you believe in them or not. With the rise of fake news, many of us have become increasingly anxious about whether the information we read online is legitimate. To ameliorate this, many online news platforms and social media sites now work with third-party fact-checking organisations, an attempt to reassure readers that what they're reading is not misinformation. But what if someone doesn't trust fact-checkers online? According to a new study, that might not matter as much as you think. Writing in Nature Human Behavior, two Massachusetts Institute of Technology researchers find that warning labels on social media posts can slow the spread of misinformation, even if people don't trust fact checkers. So this is actually a really brilliant finding, and one that is actually really exciting, because not only does this mean that we can help us spread the spread of misinformation, and it means that we can stop people from believing in misinformation because they aren't seeing it as much, but it also means that people who do not trust fact checkers because of some stupid conspiracy are also not believing misinformation quite as much though. So whatever angle we take, then this just helps to show that misinformation can be stopped the harmful effects that misinformation causes, and everything else that can be decreased, which is better for society as a whole. I also know that from my personal experience, I don't really trust a lot of stuff that I read online though, unless it comes from a trusted source. So for example, if I see something on social media, I do not believe it. I might check it up on other websites to check if it's true, but I do not believe stuff I read on social media, because it's social media and it's full of misinformation. And as much as I would like to do another psychology news article, my mental health is seriously dipping, and I would like to be able to produce this podcast episode and get it out to you on time. So I hope you enjoy the psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. So we're moving on to the personal update. So this week has been rather good because I managed to do lots of the different bits and pieces, including a very exciting project. So on the Thursday, during some outreach work at an information stand, we were getting no traffic. There were no students to come and talk to us, and both of us were really, really bored though. And everyone else who was on other stalls from different universities were on their laptops. So I said to this one ambassador, right, should we just go and get our laptops? At least we can do some work in these non-busy times. So we got a laptop, but he was doing some other work. He was doing some placement stuff. What I was doing was I was creating the ethics stuff and a brand new study. So I finished that yesterday. So but that means that I've got another study in the work. I'm not going to tell you what it is at the moment, because my supervisor still needs to approve the actual survey itself. But I've asked my housemates the questions, and they seemed pleased with it. So my measurement precision is thankfully good. That's something I'm actually quite grateful for, because I was really not sure if these questions were actually half decent. So right now I've sent it off to my supervisor, so she's going to look over it, get it back to me, and give me her thoughts and feelings on the survey. To be honest, I know that's literally just a tick box exercise in case I've made a major error. To be honest, the way how it goes now, because I'm apparently getting quite good at this, we're simply going to look over it, double check that everything's right, and then she will say that yes, this is good, please submit ethics. So I should hopefully be able to do that by the end of the week, which I am really looking forward to. And in the meantime, I have to give a massive apology for this podcast episode not coming out on time. Turns out yesterday, when I was going to record and edit this entire podcast, my mental health just died. I was not in the right mindset. One, to do this podcast episode justice. Two, to even put it out, because my mental health was really, really bad that day. So that's why the episode did not come out, but it's coming out now. But now I'm actually recording this on the Monday morning, and it was meant to come out 5-6 hours ago. So this will be out at some point today. I'm determined to make that happen. And as always, I always love to know your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So you can always email me, connorwiley@connorwiley.net, or you can always leave a comment at the show notes, at connorwhiteley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet me on Twitter at SciFiWhiteley or leave a comment on the Facebook or LinkedIn post. I always love to hear from all of you because it really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And today's episode has been sponsored by CBT for Depression, a clinical psychology introduction to cognitive behavioral therapy for depression. So this is a brilliant sponsor for today's episode because seasonal affective disorder is a type of mood disorder and it is an offshoot of depression, with major depressive episodes being the main core clinical feature. So this great, really easy to understand book helps you to understand, well, first of all, what is depression, because we focus on that, but then we also focus a lot more on what is actually CBT in this book. For example, how does CBT work? What is the cognitive approach? What is the behavioral approach? And how does CBT actually work in itself? Not only on a psychological level, but also in the practical sense, in terms of the different things that you might do with clients. How does CBT therapy end, and a lot of other really good and important practical considerations. Of course, nothing in this book or ever on this podcast is ever any sort of official advice, but it does help you to get a really good foundational understanding that you can build on in a more formal training. So this is a great book. I flat out love it. I really do love writing about CBT because it is really interesting and effective. So that is CBT for Depression, available at all major ebook retailers, and you can order the paperback and hardback version from Amazon, local bookstore or local library if you request it. And if you want the audiobook narrated by artificial intelligence, now you can at selected audiobook retailers like Spotify, Google Play, Kobo, Every, and selected library systems like Baker & Taylor, Biblioteca, and Overdrive. And whilst buying books helps to support the creation and the editing of the podcast, my time is sponsored by my wonderful patrons. And as always, a massive thank you to my patrons, whose your support shows that you like the show and you want it to continue. So if you want access to tons of great rewards while supporting the podcast on an ongoing basis, then now you can at patreon.com/the Psychology World Podcast. Or if you want to support the podcast on a one-off basis, now you can at buymeacoffee.com/Con So that's enough of the personal update. Let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So moving on to the content part of today's episode, so we're going to be talking about what is seasonal affective disorder. So this is a great episode, so let's dive into it. What is seasonal affective disorder? So seasonal affective disorder is a depressive episode that happens in the autumn and/or winter months, and it resolves itself by the summer months, when there is more light and the seasons become happier. Of course, I say that in air quotes because that's a social construct, and less depressing. Although in the third quarter of 2024, I did cover on the psychology news section of the podcast, or maybe I saw it in an article or something, I do honestly forget, that it is possible to get seasonal affective disorder in the summer months, and it resolves itself in the winter months. And that is a fascinating idea, and I look forward to seeing more research on the aspect of the condition in the coming years. In addition, in the United States of America, roughly 5% of the adult population experiences seasonal affective disorder, as well as SAD is believed to be caused by the disruption to a person's circadian rhythm that is caused by the decreased sunlight egg exposure that everyone egg experiences as the days get shorter and the nights get longer. I don't know why I went like that. Now, I'm saying this for information purposes, but I do believe in this reason because serotonin and the biological basis for depression has been debunked over the years, especially by Reed and Moncrief 2022. However, it is apparently believed that this decreased sunlight exposure leads to decreases in the neurotransmitter serotonin that is important for regulating and stabilizing our mood. Now, whether that's an actual reason for depression, I'm not going to get into that argument because I don't believe it. I've seen lots of research that says the exact opposite. Moreover, according to Melrose 2015, women are 4 times more likely to experience seasonal affective disorder than men, as well as it tends to first manifest itself in early adulthood. So this is somewhere between 18 years old and 30 years old. And at first, I thought this finding was strange, but in reality, it isn't. Since it turns out that the further you live away from the equator, that had the longest amount of the sunlight, the more prevalent seasonal affective disorder is. For example, according to an article by Horsworth, 2008, only 1% of people from Florida, I'm not going to try and pronounce that name, have a seasonal affective disorder, but 9% of Alaskans do. In addition, besides from depressed mood, some symptoms of seasonal affective disorder can include difficulty in concentrating or thinking, loss of interest in activities, sleeping for long hours, also known as hypersomnia, changes in appetite, and lack of energy or feelings of malaise or fatigue. What is the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria for seasonal affective disorder? So, from time to time, I really like to look at the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria for different mental health conditions because it's interesting, insightful, and it's good to be aware of. Now, this is not because the DSM is good or even a fine system, and it certainly has its flaws. Like, basically, no one in clinical psychology actually likes the DSM because it is very silly. Yet, it is interesting to think about. Therefore, when it comes to seasonal affective disorder, the DSM-5 focuses on the lifetime pattern of mood episodes. These mood episodes can be depressive, hypomanic, or manic, so feeling extremely good instead of having a depressed mood, as well as when a client has seasonal manic episodes as part of their seasonal affective disorder, the depression may not regularly occur during a specific time of year. In other words, there might not be anything seasonal about it. Also, the DSM makes use of the different criterions that have to be met in order for a diagnosis to be given. For example, criterion A requires a client to have a regular temporal relationship between the onset of a major depressive, hypomanic, or manic episode and a particular time of year, like the autumn or winter, in bipolar disorder type 1 and 2 cases, as well as these don't include cases where there are clear effects of seasonally related psychosocial stresses. For instance, if you're unemployed every winter for some reason. When it comes to criterion B, seasonal affective disorder requires a full remission or a change from major depression to hypermania or mania, or vice versa, at a characteristic time of year. For example, the depression disappears in the summer months. Penultimately, criterion C requires a client in the past 2 years to show that their manic, hypomanic, or major depressive episodes have a temporal seasonal relationship, as well as no non-seasonal episodes of that polarity have occurred during the 2-year period. In other words, a client needs to show that in the past 2 years they only have had a depressive, hypomanic, or manic episode that starts in winter and goes in the summer months. Finally, criterion D requires that the number of depressive, hypomanic, or manic episodes that happen seasonally outnumber any non-seasonal manic, depressive or hypomanic episodes that have happened over the lifetime. So thankfully, that's it for the criterions. Then, in terms of signs and symptoms, the DSM-5 requires the major depressive episodes that happen in a seasonal pattern to often be characterized by prominent energy, hypersomnia, weight gain, overeating, as well as a craving for carbohydrates. Also, this specifier can be applied to the pattern of major depressive episodes in bipolar types 1 and 2 disorders or major depressive disorder reoccurrence. Moreover, the onset and remission of the major depressive episodes that happen as part of seasonal affective disorder happen in characteristic times of the years, and that's what we spoke about earlier. What are some treatment options for SAD clients? As a result of seasonal affective disorder being characterized by a lack of sunlight, the condition is typically treated by getting clients to be exposed to more sunlight. Therefore, some clients push themselves to spend time outdoors or move closer to a window facing the sun. Whereas for other clients, seasonal affective disorder is treated using bright light therapy because this gives the client more exposure to sunlight. Of course, that I do say in air quotes because it's fake sunlight. In this situation, clients are exposed to a full spectrum fluorescent light box that emits brightness similar to real sunlight. Thankfully, bright light therapy is now recognized as a first-line treatment for seasonal affective disorder, and clients might start to feel an improvement in their symptoms after using the light box for only 20 to 60 minutes a day. As well as research shows that light boxes are more effective when they're used early in the morning. Another treatment for seasonal affective disorder can be selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, but this is shown to improve depressive symptoms. Yes, again, there are a lot of issues with this treatment that still remain, especially because when you combine the published and unpublished data, antidepressants, SSRIs, and more biological treatments for depression are next to useless. Finally, another treatment option for seasonal affective disorder, and this is something that my friend mentioned too, is that SAD could be caused by a vitamin D deficiency. Since as humans, our vitamin D levels naturally fluctuate throughout the year, depending on the amount of sunlight available to us. Therefore, we normally have to make up for this deficiency through our dietary intake, as we cannot produce vitamin D as effectively in the winter as there is less sunlight available to us. As a result, when it comes to treating seasonal affective disorder, good eating habits and short vitamin D supplements are important, so clients can make sure to maintain their vitamin D levels and ultimately fight against seasonal depression. Conclusion. Often we focus so much on depression that we tend to forget about the other mood disorders that exist. That's why I really enjoyed this podcast episode, because we get to see that seasonal affective disorder is characterized by depressive, manic or hypomanic episodes, starting in the winter months and ending or changing in the summer months for at least the past 2 years. Also, we get to see that bright light therapy is an effective treatment for SAD, which to me is oddly hopeful because it just goes to show that interventions for certain conditions don't need to be scary, expensive, and time-consuming. SAD can be treated with an affordable light therapy lamp, and as long as the clients are doing this in the morning for at least 15 minutes a day, then hopefully they should start to see an improvement. And considering most of the interventions we learn about on the podcast take on psychotherapy, that takes 3 months, at least according to NICE guidelines, light therapy is a pretty fascinating treatment option, and that's why different mental health conditions are great to learn about, because you never know what's going to excite you. For me, it was light therapy. For you, it might be something completely different. That's one of the many joys of learning about the fascinating world of mental health. Don't you agree? So, I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode and you got something out of it. I know that I did, because after talking to my friend about this sort of mental health condition quite a bit, it was really good to learn about it, see what we were talking about in like context, and it's just a really fun episode though. So if you know anyone who would enjoy today's episode, then please share it with them. Always really grateful when you want to be able to help spread the word about the other podcast. And if you want to learn more, definitely check out CBT for Depression, available from all major ebook retailers and all the other usual places. If you want to support the podcast on an ongoing basis, then please check out patreon.com/The Psychology Hour podcast. Or if you want to support the podcast on a one-off basis, now you can at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. So, have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Found it helpful. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on your favourite podcast app. And if you wanted to learn more, then please check out the backlist of the podcast episodes or my books at connorwhiteley.net. So have a great day and I'll see you next time.